My name is Mike Harrell, and today I'm going to be interviewing Barry Webster, and he's from the REZ Sasquatch Research, and he has a group on Facebook called the REZ Sasquatching Research Community. I wanted to just do this interview because I think it's epic, the things that you've experienced, and you got 10 years or more doing this, and you have a lot of people behind you, and you got a lot of the reservation people behind you. So I want to give you a chance to just tell the rest of your story, or more of your story than you have before.
Well, first of all, Michael, I want to thank you for this opportunity to share in what you've titled the rest of the story. And to me, that's very fitting. But I thank you again. At the same time, I've had a lot of time to contemplate and to think about, what we accomplished in terms of, you mentioned 10 years. I think when you say 10 years, I think about 10 active years, where 2 or 3 times a week I've gone out. And what I found out is that's a lot, in terms of research and as a team. And not a lot of people are blessed that way to have, that opportunity. And so, again, I just wanted to mention that. I guess as you mentioned the rest of the story, I want to say this, that I really appreciate Bigfoot Odyssey and what they've done for us in terms of, a marketing perspective, and that is it really created a lot of brand awareness. And if we're talking in the business context, but more importantly, I think, as I've stated before, there was a couple reasons why it was important for us to do that documentary with them. And I think if I could switch it up a little bit, I think it was important to do it with the right people, first and foremost, as I contemplated and had time in retrospect to think about all that took place. And so Carrie was part native, and it just felt right. Others have approached me, and for some reason it just didn't work out. So today, I'm very grateful for that opportunity to have, worked with Bigfoot Odyssey, and it was just an incredible documentary. As I watch it, as I've watched it maybe 2 times. And the second reason I think what was important was to tell it from a First Nations perspective. Not only that, but to be on the reservation and the importance of our oral history and just the journey that our ancestors paved, the trailblazing, so to speak. And so that was what was important to us at the time. Today I look back and again, I'm grateful for that opportunity. And so the thing that I felt good about, and it was kind of one of those deals where I didn't know what to expect. And right down to the very minute before we started the filming of that documentary, I got cold feet. And it was interesting because, I wasn't real comfortable. And what people don't understand is I wasn't comfortable about sharing, the history of my people and something so personal and dear to me. And I had a discussion, and I literally mean that right up to the last minute before we're going to start B-roll or whatever they call it. You know, I got cold feet, and I got because, you know, I was taken back a little bit about, you know, the meaning, the the relationship that we built. So that that was what was hard for me. And after right up to that last minute, Kerry kind of said something to me that was important. Him and uh, my brother Richard Soul, and so then it came back to me. Then I started to relax, and then it felt okay to follow through with it. But for the most part, he focused on the cloaking part, and I don't mean no disrespect to anybody who who divulges in that aspect of, of the Bigfoot realm or the Bigfoot industry. Um, I did feel like, um, you know, that it did no justice to the other encounters that I've had. But, you know, I understood his point and the direction he was taking it, his vision. And believe me, that in itself was an incredible experience. And as we've talked about, you know, to have 8 people witness that, and I never really looked at it that way in a broad sense. I looked at it as, you know, I don't really care what people say. You know, 8 people were there to witness that with me, and that's all that mattered. And you know, I know there's a lot of talk out there about do they really clone, you know, there's a lot of debate out there about that, and all I can say, and I've been told that I have somewhat of an ability to feel things or am close to being a medium or I can read those things, and you know, no disrespect to that area, that aspect, but I just it doesn't it doesn't I don't take I don't think I make that such a big deal more than I'm just grateful for the encounters that I've had, you know, and I think that's a blessing. It's very humbling to have had, whether cloaking or you know, being able to have a relationship and interact with them. To me, it's all special, you know, whether you have an opinion about it or not, you know. So anyway, those are my thoughts about that, Michael.
Well, you know, this is the thing about that is I've been into consciousness research, and I sent you a message that I got into this sort of from the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And my friend Ray Hernandez was the founder of that. And he was taken by the star people, and he said, and they said to him, we want you to connect the dots between all the different psychic things and show that they're all the same. And then the next day, he was talking on the phone with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and Dr. Rudy Shields. What I'm saying is there's a bigger picture here going on, and that is whatever your ability is, the Sasquatch picked you and gave you the grace to do that. And it's like the veil is lifting, you know, like the old days are coming back, like what our ancestors talked about, the star people and the hairy man. Those times are coming again, and people need to change their mind. So we talked before, you and I, several times, like actually many times, and one of the things that I'm interested in is because you've had an actual contact with a fully cloaked or almost invisible Sasquatch, and I've had that experience too. I've had one come and touch me, put his hand inside my chest when he was invisible. So now this is kind of epic because I've had the psychic contact with an invisible Sasquatch, and you've had psychic contact with an invisible Sasquatch, and that it was visible enough that people saw you do it. And to me, this is on, you look at it on a bigger scale, this is like a big change in the world, in my opinion. This changes everything. It's because I know dozens and dozens of people who've had spiritual and psychic Sasquatch and seen them go invisible or seen them come out of orbs. But that, when it's just one person talking, then everybody say, well, that's just you, or you're on drugs or something. But no, there's too many people now who have seen this for it to not be true. And that's why I think your story needs to be honored. And if you want to talk about how you got into it, how you built your team, then I think the people need to know that, because you have a moral character, you have a spiritual character, and almost everybody who the Sasquatch chooses to interact with has some kind of a moral character. Maybe they take care of animals, or maybe they're healers, or maybe they're musicians, or maybe they have an open heart. They choose the people that they want. And so I think that's important. And I'll let you go off on the direction that you want to.
You know, I really appreciate you saying those things, because, you know, I often get asked, if I don't get asked once or twice a day, you know, what do I think, or what's been the key for me, or what's been the success. And, you know, I really appreciate that feedback, because you talked about the bigger picture. You know, my team, you know, I believe this, that my team came together through God. You know, we evolved, and you know, through His blessing, you know, the people that are in my life are supposed to be there. Team goes, you know, we're perfect, far from perfect, but what I love about my team is, you know, they're always there, and I don't think any one of them to this day could go off on their own and say, you know what, Barry's full of it. You know, not one of them. I think everyone on my team has seen one, and or seen some interaction, you know, on our part, if not all of them. And I always say this, that, you know, thank God, you know, I don't take any credit for it, but to talk about the bigger picture, you know, I don't know, you know, I spend my time, you know, thinking about what is it, but then what it really is about glorifying God for me, you know, and it's a gift, whatever it is. You know, I can tell you that I had a gentleman the other day, in Walmart, and I haven't met him in my life, never met him before in my life, and he came right up to me because he recognized me, and he was a Native American man, and he said, he shook my hand and he said, "Good job, Barry," and I said, he caught me by surprise, and I said, "Wow, good job for what? Thank you," I said. And he says, "No," he says, "I'm a member on your page." And he said, you know, he said, he pointed at my chest, at my heart, and he said, you know, these things happen because of your heart. He said, you got a good heart. And that really was humbling, flattering, and yet I really felt that was a big part of what happens without me thinking about it. And so the bigger picture, you know, these are things I can't talk about. I don't, because sometimes people kind of have, they look at things like this from a narrow perspective. And I can honestly tell you that I think it has to do with just your connection with God, your heart. So all those things combined together, there's a deep connection between the Situnga and people with those, what I would call combined, um, kind of like integrated marketing. You know, you got to combine all those good things to have a good marketing plan. And I don't know if that's a good example, but I just believe it's a little bit of everything, you know, and I can't put a finger on it. And I'm not going to try and sit here and tell you, you know, what you need to do to have a relationship or interact with them, other than just love God, love people, and try your best, you know, in everything you do.
Well, I agree. I think that's more of a key than people want to let on. You know, that you have to be right. You have to have your heart good. If you're not a religious person, then you need to be a spiritual person or a caring person, and or a happy person. You know, and if you are doing you, then the Sasquatch will come and find you. You know, if they're close by, they know, because they're big feelers. They can feel the quality of a person.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree, Michael. That's a good. I'm glad I'm doing this interview with you. You know, I don't have to. I don't feel like I have to educate you. You know, or tell you something you don't know. So believe me, that's a relief in itself. So,
So how did you get started? What was the first year or first few months of that got you, you know, going in that direction?
well, um, to back up, you know, I had been doing it in, you know, I'm not a real big outdoors kind of guy. So about 25 plus years ago, um, when I'd make my way down to the, what we call it, the bottom by the river, there was always, you know, you always heard of the mystique or the legend or the oral history. And so there was always this investigating without really investigating. So there was always that curiosity, you know, as a young boy. But I think what really kicked it off is about 10, 11 years ago, the community really started to report and to have sightings and trash cans, you know, disturbed. You know, trash would be all over, and there was actually some sightings. So then this TV Hollywood was big into it with their little episodes, and then my son one day said, "Dad, you know, with all these local sightings, let's go out there." And that was my son Rex who challenged me to go out with him. And so we went out, and lo and behold, you know, we heard a growl, and then after that, I was hooked. You know,
Was that around 2009 or before that?
oh, yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I can't really. I don't have my notes with me, but I think the important thing was is that, you know, while we were doing that, it was important for us not just to do it from excuse my language, but the white man approach, you know, the scientific side. There was something about it that we just felt like we had to do more research, and we had to do it in, in our own Umaha way. And so, what better way to do that than to go talk to your elders? So really, taking all the wisdom and the knowledge from our elders, that's how we developed our approach. And a couple of the elderly ladies in my life, they both passed right now, but they probably gave me some of the best advice you could ever want if you were to go and research them. And one of them was respect, you know, and so I'm just really grateful for that. And so using those teachings, you know, that was I think that was the turning point for us, you know, and that was the epiphany to this relationship building and this interaction. So again, I thank our elders for the path they paved. I thank God. And I think the rest is kind of history. You know, I'm not trying to cut this conversation off short, but I'm very grateful, and I can honestly, openly tell you that I've had some encounters that I think are truly blessings from God.
Well, why don't you go into one? Pick one that's meaningful to you, and then, you know, if you feel it, then we're going to feel it. Just tell us how it happened and set it out, and try to include everything.
One of the encounters.
Yeah.
Okay. The one that I there you know what, there's probably several that jump out, and to me it just kind of seems like whatever mood I'm in. I just got back from Montana, and I can tell you that there wasn't a moment that, you know, there wasn't a minute that I didn't think about, and I probably do it with subconsciously without knowing it, but I'll just recall, you know, play back one of my encounters, and one that stands out to me, and believe me, you know, I don't exaggerate, or I'm not, you know, trying to make a story, but one that stands out to me, and I'd love to get with, and I'm actually going to reenact it with my own production company, and with Todd Neese, hopefully. But one that stands out to me, and my sister Linda and Angel were there with me to witness this. But I had a juvenile come about 4 feet from me off a branch that was directly to my left. And ahead of me about 30 yards was four adults that I was interacting with. And so, you guys turn that down. I'm doing an interview here. So that one stands out to me because, you know, it's hard for me to describe because, you know, it was one of those deals you had to be there. But to describe the feeling, it was so peaceful. It was so humbling. You know, if the juvenile, if I was thinking, but I always tell people that you don't think about those things when you're in the moment. You know, I had their attention by talking about, you know, I'm not sure what I was talking about at the time verbatim, but I know this, that he slowly slid down the branch to get closer to me, and his eyes were glowing. That was the beauty of it. His eyes were glowing, and he actually looked like a little monkey. And what I was very impressed with was that they allowed themselves to be seen by Linda and Angel. So I had two people there now, mind you, Michael. I had two people witness this up close. The adults lit up, their eye shine was lit up, and but he just kept sliding down, and at no point in time while he was getting closer to me did I feel threatened. In fact, I almost felt like I should have said, "Can I hold you?" and should have reached out to him. And I wonder what would have happened. And you know, as you sit there and you think about this, and I could just see people saying, "Why didn't you take a picture?" Well, it never crossed my mind, Michael, to take a picture. In fact, that was my promise to them, that I wouldn't take their picture. And so you know, today, as I go out, I'm asking more and more for their permission to take a picture. And if they allow, you know, I want to show, it's kind of privately my own goal to get a picture with their permission, with whatever they're willing to allow. The unmost deniable, whatever adjective you want to, however you want to describe it. If they'll let me take a picture, Michael, I'm going to take the picture, and I want to show the world. So, but that experience there was unbelievable. You know, I walked away from that feeling like, man, there is something going on here. I can remember saying that to myself. You know, I've said this one time. I've said that I could walk away from this, and I could be happy. I'm content with the relationships that I've had and what I've seen.
Well, this is to me, that's an epic story. I mean, a lot of people who are never seen a Sasquatch or don't understand about it, or they think that there's some kind of ape or something. They don't understand how intimate that is to be with a child of a Sasquatch parents. The child be right there, and then the parents being there watching you, and there being no conflict. There's being like a grace or a peacefulness and acceptance. This is very rare, because that means that you had done your work, they know you thoroughly, and they trust you. And that's an important thing. You know, you have showed respect for 10 years, and they trust you, and that's a big deal, to have the Sasquatch trust you with their own child. You know, when people get their rocks thrown at them and yelled at and everything, is because there's children around and they don't trust those people, so they yell at them and throw rocks at them and try to bluff charge them, because they're very, very protective of their children and their family. But to have you and your family come there, your friends, that to me is epic. That's an epic event, and people need to know. I'm really glad you talk about that. And if you got any more stories like that, try to remember them and tell them. People need to know that if you're a good person and you're good to them, then they'll let you get close.
You know, Michael, I have plenty of stories. I just don't want to. I don't know how much time we have. At the same time, you know, there'll be always another time for me to come back, because I don't think I'm done. I just need to slow down in my own time. You know, I had to remind myself I'm running my own race. You know, I'm not in competition. I think there's some people, and I can honestly say, that would die to have the experiences I have, and I'm afraid, you know, they, my message back to those people who would die to have the experiences I have, uh, I think they should die to have. That makes sense, you know. But
Yeah, they should let their old hard-heartedness die. That has to die.
yeah, yeah, and to continue on with another story that I felt, you know, deserved attention, and was the 20-minute encounter. I think it's on my page. The big guy who's turned like this. You've probably seen it. It's kind of pixelated a little bit, but that right there.
Oh, I remember that. That was a great story. Tell that story.
You know, Michael, I will say this, outside of the juvenile, that I probably had some of the, you know, hopefully when I die, they'll name a day after me, and everybody will come and celebrate and say, yeah, he saw, he had a 20-minute encounter, you know. And I'm not, when I say that now, Michael, the important thing to remember is this, is that I didn't see him walking away. I didn't see him turn. There was a real special meaning behind it, you know, and in the documentary, I started to shed tears because, you know, not to make a story, but because these relationships are very spiritual to me. And the problem I have is when I take people out and they don't trust that. You know, I always felt like I defied that trust, but really I've learned that it was about the individuals, the new individuals that I'm bringing with me. So I don't, I don't always, I don't think I'm aspiring to really take that part on anymore about trying to prove it to people in person or doing these investigations. I, I'm going to start closing that off now and really focusing on really getting some deeper understandings by myself and with people that I trust. But to continue on with the story, um, there was the behind the scenes stuff that I don't talk about. Is we probably spent 30 days, Michael, or more in that same spot. I was told, and it was explained to me, when you do research, you always go back same time, wear the same clothes. So there was some real discipline involved, and there was some questioning that was involved that I think really, outside of all the other things that made this happen. One thing that I've said, and I know it's always like when you say something, people take your words and try to make a story out of it, or say, you know, I think I had that happen to me, and I'm not being ugly about that, but Michael, I have met a lot of people in the Bigfoot world, and not one person was able to tell and explain to me the eye rotation. The eye rotation, the eyes rotated, and they were just like the moon, Michael. That's what blew me away. Today, that's what I can tell you. And the power, the supernatural power, my niece was actually filming them up close. And for a split second, I saw her filming, and I thought, oh my God, you're filming? Great. And my focus went right back on him. And he literally erased himself while his eyes were rotating. It had a robotic kind of noise. And I had, nobody's ever been able to get that close or tell me that those are some of their special powers.
Well, I can tell you what it is from my point of view, because I've seen a human being do that. I was studying, in my life, I met several enlightened men, some God men from India, and this one guy was an American guy, a white guy, and these guys had spiritual power. They were enlightened. And I went to see this guy named Sri Chinmoy, and I was in a big theater with a lot of people. They turned off the lights. This guy didn't say a word. What he did is he looked at each member of the audience one by one. It was a big, like a concert hall or something. And we were up like so then when he kind of got to me, this guy had light coming out of his eyes. And it's like, and that just burned into my soul. What that light was he was filling himself up with light, the divine light, God's light. You know, when thine eyes become single, your whole being will be filled with light. And that's what it is. And when you and when you're filled with light, then you can project that light out. And as soon as I heard about eyeshine, I knew exactly what they were. And people, and here again, people in the West, we don't have a history of enlightened men, of God men. You know, we don't have that history. We have preachers and teachers and the Bible, but the God men of India, they can do that kind of stuff. They can go invisible, and they can have light coming out of their eyes, and they can show up in your room and things like that. So in a lot of ways, the Sasquatch are teaching us what we can do. So I don't know if that's exactly how they did it, but I can tell you that you don't look for like electrochemical or something. You have to look at a very elevated soul, somebody who's completely connected to the life force. And that light, that life becomes the light of mankind, or Sasquatch. That's a really high state.
Yeah, no, I have to agree, because there was definitely, you know, as I think back on that, because I ended up going back out there with the police. One of my nephews came after me, and I couldn't sleep. I was still in what they call shock. Um, and I literally had to go back out to that location, and he took me out there, and I got off, and I could feel the energy that was still left there by their presence. It seemed so bright. It just was, it was unreal, the feeling that I felt after everything was said and done. And you know, here's one thing that I'm glad we're talking, Michael, because I'm glad you understand that deeper side of it. Because I can tell you, and this is something that I don't talk about on my page, because you know, I have different levels of what I would call squatchers. And but I can tell you that every movement, Michael, was human-like. And I may write a book, and when I do, I'm gonna talk about that human-like movement. I don't think there's enough credit given toward that. And first of all, he was crouched down like a coach. Uh, the movements, it was almost like, I promised, I told him something that I would do, Michael, and he came to me and he wanted that. He wanted that. And then when we were just dumbfounded looking at him, it's almost like he got frustrated with us and turned and walked away. Emotion, he showed emotion, he showed human-like movements. Uh, just by far, you know, one of the greatest encounters I've had.
And that was the one where you were like 20 minutes with him, right?
Yeah.
And you had, how many people were there, as well as a few of them, weren't there? 2 or 3?
There was two with me.
Yeah.
In fact, we have video of it.
Yeah. I saw the blur. You know, I saw it's a little bit blurry, but if you feel it, if you understood the story, and when you watched the reaction, you could understand what he was doing. He was kind of like looking back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he walked away, and we caught him pretty good in the light walking away from us. Had to be about an 8-footer, but he's the one that I interact with and have a really special relationship, Michael. And I've decided that I'm not sure I want to share that with anybody now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, here again, to me, to understand Sasquatch on this level, you have to go up to a higher level. You have to take everything to a higher level. And there's not a lot of people who are ready for that. You know, and because they hit you with a feeling that you don't even get in church. It's like a sacredness. For that moment, there's something sacred happened, something special happened. And you know, I don't want to put a lot of words on it, but that's a reason why a lot of people who are having one-on-one contact with a Sasquatch, they don't talk about it, because to them it's sacred, and they don't want to put anything on the Sasquatch, so they're quiet about it.
Yeah. You know, Michael, how do I say this? You know, Michael, that spiritual feeling that you experience, you know, is unbelievable. You know, and that's the tears that came from my eyes, and I had, you know, I was trying to be, you know, very calm and very serious about the documentary interview. But when I started to talk about it, and I thought about some of the promises that were made, that if you shook my hand, I would be done with this. And so I had a lot of soul searching to do from the time that documentary was done. Was it my time to quit? I think you and I had a long discussion about that. And I appreciate your feedback on it. But the spiritual side of it, uh, you know, you have to be willing to humble yourself, I think, to even reach that level. Not to say I'm there or I accomplished that. It speaks for itself. Um, Another encounter that I've had, we've had this big ball appear before us, and it slowly disappeared. And when it disappeared, it made this kind of boom sound, like you see a bomb blow up, and it went, and it lit up the whole area we were standing in while I was praying. And so there is definitely, so I don't ever condemn people or judge people for saying there's dimensions. At the same time, I will never, because I'm not familiar with that area, I'll never judge people for understanding that. All I know is what I experience and what I feel.
Well, let me give you a backup. There's this lady that I met, and I know her. Her name's Angela Shear, and yeah, and she's the state director of the MUFON of Tennessee,
Okay.
and she switched. She does the UFO investigations, and she started getting into uh, investigating about Sasquatch because so many people were saying, "Oh, there was a UFO and it was a big giant orb came out of the UFO," and then the it just the big orb thing just disappeared, and then the Sasquatch ran away. And it's like after, and this isn't, she's not the only one. There's people who see this all. I have another friend in New York who is like in this flight line of where the UFOs fly, and he sees that every night. These big balls of light, ball of light disappears. So I mean, I don't know what that is. I have never experienced it myself, but all I'm saying is there is a history of it. There's people who see that, and so when I hear 3 or 4 different stories from different people, I think there's something to it. You can't just throw it out. You can't just say, "Oh, that's crazy talk." No, it's real.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think there's probably 10 other stories I could tell, and I think this deserves another interview. But I wanted to hit on some of those key areas, and one is that connection with God. And I'll be the first to tell you that I couldn't have did this. Our team, we all realized we couldn't have did this without some divine intervention through God. And if it's my way of glorifying God, and I had a friend say, "Well, you cracked the code, buddy. You know, everybody's struggling to let alone just see them, and now you're interacting with them." And so I was flattered by that comment. At the same time, there's still a lot more to learn, and I've refocused myself, and rather than get out, I want to preserve and learn more from them. So hopefully this isn't our last interview.
Well, we got time. We're only at like 45 minutes, so we got more time. And I wanted to say, I wanted to throw my 2 cents in on that. It's like, I don't know if people out there who've heard about you know, but you pray up in the morning before you go out squatching, and then when you get to your location, I've heard that you pray again. And it's like, the reason why I want to stress that is not that, is to bring a point, you know, and the point is that the Sasquatch are not evil. If the Sasquatch were evil, Nephilim, and all this kind of stuff that people get into, or monsters, they would not be able to stand around people who prayed up that much. And you're talking about going out sometimes 3 times a week or sometimes every day with it. You know what I mean? You're prayed up. There's no evil, bad thing going to happen to you, you know? So I think that's important. People need to know that. I mean, people are filled with fear and filled with anxiety. And, but you guys are prayed up, and when that happens, it has to be because there's grace, because it's okay with God. It's, they're okay with God, you're okay with God, and nothing bad going to happen to you. And that's important news. I mean, it's natural to you, and it maybe not even important because you do it like breathing. But for a lot of people, they go out there with their bear spray and guns and they're ready to kill everything. And that's not the that's okay, I guess, if you're a hunter or something, but how are you going to have a relationship with a people like that, you know?
Yeah, I really like your perspective on that, and you're right. And I can't emphasize enough. You know, people, again, as I've stated earlier, would die to have these experiences. But before you do that, I think the message has been clear to me a long time ago that this is some kind of warning. This is some kind of warning that you guys better get your lives right. And it took me a hard time to accept that fact. And I think through interaction and through the, the humility and through meditation and prayer, you know, something's happening to this world, and I'm not trying to be psychic or predicting the future. There's just something going on, and if we're not going to open our minds and ears and eyes to what's happening and change the way we think and we live our lives, then I think we're missing the point.
I could not agree more. It This whole thing, all the stuff that's happening with the ET people and Star Nations coming and visiting everybody, and they've been doing that for this whole lifetime. People have been taken, and and then now you got the Sasquatch and the Dog Man. There's like a veil lifting. There's something that's happening to humans, and humans are changing more now than ever. More people are into healing. More people become healers, and they're trying to, trying to get it right, because that's part of the time that we're in. They call it the awakening. People are awakening. More people want to find out what's going on. What's going on with the Sasquatch or the Dog Man or what's going on with the ET people, the Star Nations? Is there a war going on there, or something bad? Well, it turns out that they're not bad. They did a big giant survey, and they found out that like 85% of the people who've been taken and contacted by the ET people, they want more because they got upgraded and they got more love and they got more spiritual insights and they got more wisdom and more compassion and they love Mother Nature more. So there's stuff going on. And like the near-death experience people, well, we've got modern medicine, and now they're taking notes of all the people who have died on the operating table and they're dead for like 3 or 4 minutes, and they bring them back. These people all talk about they went to heaven, they saw their relatives and all this stuff, and they've written hundreds and hundreds of books about that, So there's just a great awakening happening on every level, the healing level, the spiritual level, the God level, the animal level. So, you're right. I agree with you. There's something bigger going on here, and we got to get right to keep up with it.
Yeah, exactly. I've come to understanding that if you think you're going to get rich, and if you think that somehow this is just a game, a dumb creature walking through the timber, you're wrong. I've learned that they're very tactical, already 10 steps ahead of what you're thinking. I mean, it's always it's always an adventure for me. My team can attest that there is something very special happening, and something, a very special relationship that has been developed. You know, that's a more humbler way to put it. And I can tell you, Michael, that I'm very grateful for that. You know, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I could go to my grave and know that God has blessed me with the gift of discernment. You know, people forget, you know, through the gospel, that God has given us gifts. If we humble ourselves, we can magnify those gifts. And I believe, you know, I've been blessed with those gifts at that time, the moment. And there's gifts that He's given us with the ability to heal, and some of these, what I want to say, the tools that He's given us based on how we live our life. You know, you talked about healing. So, you know, again, just to re-emphasize the point about, you know, being one with God, you know.
That's important. And the other thing is, I've been like watching you from the, I've been watching you from the sidelines for a while, and I've seen you gone to 2 or 3 funerals, and you've got community events, and you've got family events. And what does that tell me? That tells me that you have a big heart. I mean, you drive all the way to Nebraska for one of your relatives, and you know, you got a big heart because you're engaged with your family, you're engaged with your community, and you're working on all kind of projects on the side to make life better. And you know, you're a leader in your community, and I just think that's important. You know, that big-hearted people have an advantage out there talking to the Sasquatch. I think that's an important part of it, to be a good, moral, good person. Just that's all you really need. It's not like rocket science.
I think you, boy, Michael, I think you hit it on the head. You know, I think just following God and the example of Jesus Christ, you know, to me, that's important. You know, I was, to take a big step back, Michael, I was a basketball player. I had life all wrong, you know. I was very arrogant. I was gifted to play the game of basketball, and I went down this the wrong road with it. And over time, long story short, I found God. You know, I ended up injuring my knee. My dreams were basically shattered, but it was a blessing because I drew closer to God. And again, I think you've said it for me. You know, that there's no rocket science to it. Just be a good person, you know, and let God guide you. Let it inspire you. So
I think that's a good place to end it. You know, so we're almost an hour, a little short of an hour. But if we ever want to do it again, we'll do it again. But you got a lot. You said a lot. If people will listen or re-listen to the video, you said a lot. You know, if you have ears to hear.
well, again, Michael, I appreciate it. I appreciate your level of understanding. You know, I think you're a blessed individual yourself, and I know I mentioned earlier in our discussion, you know, I'd love to have you up here and to experience this with me. And you know, you're very welcome to come up here in my homeland.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah. All right. Well, good night, and we'll talk. We'll talk later. I'll see you in your group.
Appreciate it. Later.